because gambling would be considered a prize tax because you bet money and you won something. And whenever you win something, you won a prize. So every if you're making $300 a day by gambling, you're making $300 a day of taxable income by gambling. And then at the other thing, I see your comments, Michael. I'm not skipping over. Uh, and then uh, if you were to go to that same gambling facility, you can actually get tax forms from the gambling facility that shows how much money you uh, won versus how much money you lost, and utilize that on your taxation because that's actually a prize tax. So no, you don't make tax free money. You just make money you don't claim on your taxes, which is different. Uh, Michael says you're making me depressed because everything you are saying is true. Well, you know what it is, Michael. You know what it is. He says, now I see a lot of people going to college and can't answer a simple equation. So is it smart to go to college if it seems like people aren't getting anything out of it? Um, oh, so hold on a second. You said only 2,000 wins are taxed. So what you're saying is that you're losing more money than you're winning, and then when you win back the money that you had originally lost, which has you breaking even, and you only end up with something like $2,000, but which is throwing away a lot of money. If you're losing money at the casino that much by gambling, and then when you do win big, you won $2,000 more than what you invested, and that's the taxable income that you have. Then no matter how much you're getting, you're only turning up 2,000. But that's a lot of effort. That's a waste of time. I'm gonna come back to the first question. Best investment as a school, college versus trade school, join the army. A trade school would be a better fit for the average individual because a trade school will teach you skills. And that will go back to your question. A trade school will give you skills. And when a trade school, you use the skills from the trade school to get the jobs that the skills are for. But there are soft skills that you can learn on your own without having to go to a trade school. College used to be about networking. It wasn't necessarily about going there and learning how to do the job and getting the degree. It was about attending a four-year institution and networking with individuals, fraternities, and alumni scenarios and mentorship, and then potentially interning in the job that you wanted to have by meeting those individuals in that atmosphere of a college, and then potentially getting that job. Or say like you went to Harvard or Yale or something to that effect, and the employer that you're applying for also went to Harvard or Yale or something like that, because your alumni buddies, they would hire you based on association. College helps you out in ways like if one of your alumni that graduated from your university has the type of job that you want, even if you're not in their fraternity, if you wanted to get in a foot in the door in that particular type of career, you could have them put in a good word for you at their company, and then their company could hire you. And if you have a good work ethic, then you could get the job. So college was more about networking, not actually about learning. Now, another thing is that if you think about the kind of curriculum that the rich and famous have versus the kind of curriculum that the poor and destitute have. The rich and famous have the type of college where they are socializing with each other. They're negotiating deals with one another. Meet me here. Let's go there. And you believe that it's all about partying, but it's not. It's about meet and greets where you meet other individuals, you greet other individuals, you establish bonds with other individuals, because most big level business deals come from who you know. If you don't know who knows where the money's at, because you don't know where the money's at, then you're not going to be able to get your dollars on the table in order to get a profit off of the deal. It just like the guy that's gambling. In order for him to know which tables are hot, somebody's got to tell him that table's hot, and then he can get on that table and he can put his money down and turn over a profit. Same thing with investment opportunities. Somebody's got to tell you that this is a good investment for you to do some research and look into in order for you to even think to do some research and put your money towards that. And then if you did do that research and find out, okay, I can put my money here and I'll get me a return on that, you dive on it while that opportunity is still there. You find yourself becoming financially successful. But it's not just what you know in college. It is also who you know. And that's what you're going to college for, as far as what do you get out of the deal. Beyond that, you're going to college and you're only really drawing back the uh, you're only drawing back a mediocre education that really is reinforcing the same stuff that you got off of high school, and none of it is teaching you how to invest. It's not teaching you how to balance budgets. It's not teaching you how to expand your financial portfolio. It is only teaching you how to follow instructions and walk out of there with a piece of paper, because that's really what it is. It's a piece of paper. And with online colleges happening right now, you can almost buy your degree offline. What employer has ever reached out to your university and double checked to see if your degree was even there? They don't really care. You say that you graduated from a college, that all they care about is, if you're a lawyer, can you generate this particular document? You can learn that from firsthand experience of filing your own cases. As a doctor, you would have, that's probably the only place where going to college actually does get you hands-on experience, when you get into med school. How to do the surgeries, how to cut open the bodies, how to utilize the needles is probably the only place. Everything else, the 4-year degree followed by 5 years of education or experience on the job, they're not the same, because you don't get the on-the-job experience from the college. You get the on-the-job experience from networking through the college to that particular type of job as an unpaid intern or a reduced pay intern on that job, to get that 5 years of experience. And with the 150% completion rating, uh, if you do the 150%, that 4-year degree is going to be like 6 to 8 years. And if you started on your first or second year of college interning in the job that you wanted as you went to college for that job, by the time you graduated that job, that the college, from 6 to 8 years, the job you would have had 5 or 6 years or 7 years of experience in. So even if you didn't keep the job that you were working on during college, you will find yourself being able to get another job, because you can reference your first job that you had in college as the years of experience, and then the 4-year degree, and then you've got the job, the second job. But if you think about it, if you go out of high school, go straight to college, only focus on book smarts, don't work, or if you work, you're like flipping burgers at a McDonald's or something, then you graduate from college, and then you say, well, I want to go to an IT department, or I want to go to a law firm, or I want to go to some other place. Guess what? You still got to put in that 5 years. So when it comes to that, no, the college doesn't do squat for you. There's some of the richest people around the world didn't even go to college. Cameron says, I'm going to the Army 2 years. I'm going to be an Army Ranger medic. And I was just curious on his opinion. Going as an Army Ranger medic you can do that. I'm not going to say don't do it. If you're doing a 2-year service, you're probably going to get yourself a GI Bill. That's going to pay for your ability to go to college. If you're trying to be a medic in the Army, you're probably going to get the field experience from the Army. And then when you come back from the Army, you're going to get the degree after you come back to college, because you still got to get that certification and pass the bar in order to treat people outside of Army experience. So like Michael said, good for you. And then by the time you get out of college, your field experience treating patients on the battlefield plus your degree will give you the legal ability to treat patients in either private practice or work at a local hospital. That again is going to be who you know, because the skills, the what you learned and the skills that you learned from the Army will back you up when you go into med school, which will back you up when you go into the medical field. So I mean, that's a good direction to go. Because if you're going to go from being a field medic in the Army to being a surgeon in private practice, or being a surgeon in a local hospital, I mean, that's a decent paying job. He said, once you get in, sign in to go to Fort Smith, Houston, Texas for advanced medical training. See, now it's based on who you know. So because you came to this podcast, Michael's 71, almost 72 years old. He knows what he's talking about. He's telling you where to go to network yourself into the best possible opportunity to achieve the goals that you're trying to get. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about helping people get better at what they want to do with their lives. Um, he says, let the army pay for your doctor's degree. Damn right. That way you let them pay the whole GI Bill. That way you walk out with nothing to pay for, because if they're covering it, then you don't have any bills on the back end. Because I'm going to my cousin is going to be a combat medic. His ship he ships out July 28th and is going there for 19 weeks of AIT school. Okay. Congratulations to both of you. Y'all be careful out there. And when you come back, make sure that you dive into the show. And as long as you got internet while you're sailing out there, make sure that you put us on blast while y'all out there on them ships. That way, those guys can learn how to make themselves more successful. Because one of the things that I teach people on this podcast is that your 20-year plan, you're talking about the next 2 years, which is fantastic. Well, what are you going to do 4 years after that? What are you going to do 10 years after that? So your 20-year plan is where you want to stop at. Or hell, if your 20-year plan is where you want to be at in your career, where you still have the capability to stop, but you want to keep going for another 40. You know what I mean? It is always good to um, make a plan to figure out where you want to be at in life, and then you can talk to your elders and talk to mentors who can give you the information that helps you direct yourself completely to the goals that you're trying to accomplish. And by listening to people like me and Michael and Jolin, whenever Jolin comes onto the show, we have a lot of brilliant minds that come to the show that would provide you with the information that you need to be successful, so that you can take what we give you, and then you can do your research, and then you can find the best way to get your foot in the door. Now, his question is, why do you need to go to college? College is a bottleneck private entity that all big businesses have agreed that you have to have this piece of paper in order to work in this particular type of field. And then college charges you to get that piece of paper. That's really what it is. But can you work without that? In some situations, yes. But going to college to get the piece of paper that you need to go and get the certificate to get to be the surgeon, there's certain criteria that a certain job makes you have. And because that job makes you have that, or they won't hire you, that's where college comes in at. It's not a requirement to do the job. It's just a requirement from it's an arbitrary requirement from the employer that doesn't show your skill set at all. Your college degree does not show how good you are at saving lives. He's in, why can't you just study what to do and do it? My dad was a high school dropout, and a couple of years later, he was an IT director leading a team of guys. You don't need to go to college to learn how to do the stuff. The only thing you're going to college for is to get that piece of paper. Now, certain jobs like IT, you can get a certification by taking a test and passing the bar, or getting a certification. Being a lawyer, you don't necessarily have to always go to law school. You have to know enough knowledge to take the test and pass the bar. In order to go into real estate, you don't have to go to college to go to real estate. All you have to do is take the test and pass the bar. You're taking a test to get a certification so that you can get paid to do it in whatever city and state that you're doing it in. Brokerage accountant, you're just taking a test that shows that you know enough knowledge to get that done. So you don't have to go to college to get that, but everybody is taught to go to college to get that. But you go to college and get a lot of historical information about why it's done, not how to do it. And then in your master's degree, you're applying yourself to getting it done, which makes no sense. You're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to not know shit, and then you're supposed to apply that to a job. Now, here's the funny part before we start getting into our politics for today. A lot of fast food restaurants, the manager has 1 to 3 bachelor's degrees in order to be the manager of the store. So you can go to college and you can get a degree in just about anything you want, and then that will qualify you to be a manager of a fast food restaurant with dropouts that make more money than you. So you can go to college and make far less money than the people who were doing manual labor long before you decided to get that job. You can start in the middle. You don't have to put 15 years in to get the middle position because you got that bachelor's degree, but it doesn't really qualify you for that upper management position. He said, by the way, thank you both, Michael and you, for your help. You're welcome, Cameron. Anytime you stop by and you ask us questions, because that's what we're here for. We're here to help improve people's ability to make decisions. He said the question is, why spend 12 years in school since everything you need to know can be accomplished by the ninth grade? That's because everything that you are learning throughout first of all, they don't even give you everything by the ninth grade. I got a lot of people that I'm teaching right now that don't know fourth and fifth grade level mathematics, and they're in the 10th and 11th grade. The no kid left behind policy ages children out of the last grade level into the next grade level without having the curriculum learned that is required for them to pass to the next grade. So now you have children graduating from high school because of their age, not because of their knowledge level. If they were, uh, if they were to only graduate if they could qualify for the quantity of knowledge for that grade level, you would undoubtedly have 25 and 30-year-olds still in high school. Like Cameron said, there's some people that have done 4 to 6 years of college and still don't have the knowledge to answer an equation. But we also come from the same economy that states that C's make presidents. So you don't have to be the smartest tool in the shed to lead the country. You just have to know the right people to get your foot in the door. When you're getting into politics, you can get into politics with a background of student government. You could be a class president. You can be getting into the student government in your local community college. Then you can get into student government in your four-year institution. You can use that background to intern into government politics, local government politics, like the governor or the mayor or something like that, and then work your way up into where you're working under the governor, you're working under the mayor. And then because you don't piss them off, you use them as a reference to work your way up to Congress. But you're going to go places and you're going to meet people and you're going to go to these soirees and you're going to go to these business meetings and you're going to meet the right people. And that person is going to advocate for putting you in a position that allows you to be on the fast track to presidency. But it's who you know. It's not because you are not going to take a class in college to be one of the 500 people in Congress. The majority of the people in Congress don't even have to go to college to be in Congress. Some of them are second generation, like my father was in this position. Everybody knows my dad. That's why I'm in this position. That's how they are. He said become what is that? Auto didacat. I think you typed that incorrectly, or I'm pronouncing it wrong. I don't know. An aristocrat, I thought you would have been trying to put up there, but we'll figure it out. Now, for today's show, because I know a lot of people are popping in because they want to know what's going on with the government shutdown. We already have this experience happen plenty of times before, but one of the most powerful countries in the earth is stop working again. Okay. Well, not all of it at least, but the really critical pieces have. Oh, okay. So you did spell it right. I pronounced it wrong. Self-taught. See, always learning something new. If you imagine the government is about to shut down, where the very agencies that were created to protect us from situations like 9/11, such as the Department of Homeland Security, you might have a bit of a concern. But here's the truly strange part. Even if it happens, even if the country still gets shut down yet again, or even if we keep going on with this repetitive shutdown behavior, the borders will mostly stay open and the TSA agents will still be at the airports. So this isn't some movie plot. It's a bizarre legal reality of a government shutdown that continues to resurface itself, where the very people that we trust to keep us safe are forced to work for free yet again. So how is this possible? Well, how can an agency be closed for business while its most essential employees are still on the job, but not on the payroll? to figure that out, we need to untangle the political fight, because with a 19th century law and the lives of hundreds of thousands of workers caught right in the middle of it, this is something that we have been deciphering for a number of years. He says, were you ex-military, Michael? So you sure know a lot of knowledge about the military. Well, here's the thing. While Michael can be ex-military, you don't actually have to do something to know everything there is to know about it. That's one of the things that people don't really pay attention to. Sometimes people do not respect the credibility of knowledge because they do not trust the source enough to research it. However, if he lives near Texas, or he had at one point in time lived near Texas, because at 71 or 72 years old, he's had plenty of time to move around the country. If he has communicated with enough successful people who have performed that exact same task that he has recommended to you, that is enough information, like a Wikipedia post, for you to use that to search in the Texas area to verify if that is still a thing. Because even if that would have worked for him 40 years ago, does it work today? Yeah, see, look, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and Fort Sam. That doesn't change the fact that that was 50 plus years ago. That was more than 50 years ago. You know what I mean? So while he does have effective and accurate knowledge, medical training at Madigan Army Hospital. So that does not mean that the quality is going to be the same as it was before. It should be. So since he has firsthand experience, because apparently he's been through the war and he's done the medical training, he can tell you that, go to such and such place and they'll hook you up. You research that place, and if he wanted to give you his information in a DM somewhere where he could reference you, he can make a phone call and somebody knows that you're coming. And then when you go there, they would be expecting you. This is the kind of network scenario that happens on this podcast, and that would happen in a college scenario where you now know, since that's what you want to do, and he knows where to go, that he can refer you. So it's not so much does he have to be ex-military in order for you to take that knowledge and do research on it? If he is ex-military, who can he refer you to so that you can follow up on his recommendation? And that's one of the things that people have to change in society, because a lot of times you can get good advice from people that you don't really respect them enough to get their advice. And then you have individuals that'll give you bad advice because that's your homeboy, you trust the advice. And we just did a show about that, about not trusting your neighbors and your friends with their advice, that surefire thing. It's a situation where you just got to do your research. But if he knows somebody that's still in the office, or if he knows somebody who used to be in the office, who knows somebody that's in the office, he can make a phone call, and by the end of the week, he could be in contact with somebody who could contact you, or you can contact them and they know that you're coming, so that the meeting can occur where you don't have to go through all of this orientation stuff to get to the right person. I was telling you guys about backdoor ways to get into jobs, because if you know the alumni, and then the alumni can redirect you to HR, instead of you filling out an application online on Indeed.com, you can actually be talking directly to HR, and that'll give you the ability to get hired faster. Because I was just curious, because not a lot of people don't know much about the military, and I've studied and talked to a lot of ex-military, so I know a little bit. I was just curious because he seems knowledge. That's all we got going on this show. I try my best to filter out all of the noise. I try to filter out the trolls that come to the podcast, and make sure that the comment section is more purified with positive content and positive information, so that when you come here, you're getting the knowledge that you need to do the things that you want to do, regardless of whatever it is. Because the legacy that I build is the success of the people around me. So you achieve your goals, because you communicated with somebody on a live podcast where this and that directed you to where you could be successful. That's where my legacy comes from. So while you're on your third year tour, you're like, man, this podcast got me hooked up. I'm watching this podcast, and this podcast got me hooked up. That's the legacy that I'm building. Is that thanks for your service, Michael? Yeah, and you inspire me to join the Rangers. Any advice? Give them some advice, Michael. Tell them what else to do with the Rangers. My father was in the Army. It's I'm an Army brat too. I, of course, have not been in the Army. I don't like to follow instructions. However, that's why I'm my own boss, because I read the instructions, I do it the way it's supposed to be done, and then, I figure out a way to do it better. But in the military, you do as you're told. There's only so much of that I can do, because if you're telling me to do something out of spite and that goes against protocol, I'm gonna be asking questions like, why am I putting myself in a position to get court-martialed? I'm not that guy. I'm not like, do what you say, not say. So I don't mean to interrupt your podcast, by the way. It's just nice to talk to someone that has been in the Army. I don't mind, buddy. I don't mind. So here on This and That, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between, we do have strawman conversations where we talk about different things outside of the main topic. And I do redirect back to the main topic, but I do a lot of research. And after I do the research, then I compile a script, and then I segue off of the script and have brief conversations with you guys, and then get back onto the script and produce the information that a lot of people came for. So the podcast could be anywhere between an hour and 3 hours long. Eventually, I'm going to finish talking about what I came here to talk about for the day. And those people who came here to get all of that information will stay the full time. Those individuals that wasn't coming to learn something because I'm not an attractive girl with my cleavage out, they're going to sit here for a few minutes and then they're going to walk away because they're not entertained. They thought, because I'm on their shorts reel because of the vertical live stream, they thought that this was going to be a short synopsis, and then they found out that this is a live full-time podcast, and they're like, oh, snap, and swipe away. So individuals that linger here for the knowledge and then subscribe to the channel, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, Cameron. Those individuals get more knowledge from the archive of information that we possess. And if you take the time to scroll through this channel and look at all the videos that we've been posting over the last couple of years, you will see that there is because we go live every night of the week. And so we have well over 366 videos a year of all of the stuff that can be done to make yourselves better. So I don't mind segueing a little bit. He says, get an MOS that you can use in life, which is a medical transportation logistics scenario. Okay, cool. My MOS would be 68W, which will allow me to be a paramedic when I get out. But I will let you get to your podcast. My apologies. No, you're good. You're good. But I'm enthusiastic by this because every time I help somebody, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, like and subscribe to the channel. I greatly appreciate that. That helps me reach more people like you that want to get more knowledge and become better people. And I have no problem with having a podcast full of questions on how to be a better person, so that your life is better, not so that society likes you, because I could get two shits if society likes me. I want to be successful for myself. And if we had that top-down mentorship where the elders gained knowledge and shared it with the young ones, we would not have to waste our money on paying these gurus who are going to sell us this seminar, then sell us this membership for $399 a month for them to be better at for not telling you nothing. You know what I mean? I prefer for you to follow this information and get stuff, and because you're going to be a medic, and then after being a medic, at some point in time, you're going to get tired of it. No matter what career you do, you're going to get tired of it. And following a lot of the stuff that I talk about investing, about savings, about budgeting, when you're ready to retire from being a medic, you should have enough money set aside where you're continuously generating income without having to work. And that's when you can quit. So you do what you love, or you get paid what you need to cover your standard of living, whichever one you got to do. And eventually, you're going to end up in a position where when it's time for you to stop working, you don't need to struggle anymore. And that's the goal. That's the end goal. You're good, Michael. I love it when you jump in, buddy. I appreciate that. Airborne medic. Whew, nothing like doing a heart transplant in a moving helicopter. So, before we get to the strange reality of our borders, we need to understand what the government shutdown actually is, because we've talked about this quite a few times before. And in terms of that, we're going to get thrown into a lot of things. But most people do not know how all of this stuff works. So I'm going to touch base on it for a little bit. Simply put, a shutdown happens when Congress fails to pass the laws needed to fund the government. So think of it like a subscription for a federal agency. Congress has to renew that subscription, usually by passing 12 different funding bills for the fiscal year, which was supposed to start on October 1st, and they shit the bed on that one. So when they can't agree on those bills, maybe they're fighting over spending or specific policies, that deadline is going to pass and the subscription lapses. The same way if you don't pay your Netflix by the end of the billing cycle, it cuts off your Netflix. It's the exact same thing. This is going to be called a funding gap. So you might think the government would just keep running on a good faith scenario, but a very old and strict law says no to that. The result isn't a total halt of everything. Instead, it starts a weird shorting process, separating government work into essentials and non-essentials. He said, I'm heading out, y'all. Thank you both again. I hope to see y'all next live stream. Oh, yes, sir. I'll see you. We're here every night of the week. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things about making some money, so you can always dive in. If you do nothing other than give a shout out in passing, hey, drop in whenever you can. I greatly appreciate that. What is that? I don't know. Okay, so lately, this has become a targeted affair because as of early February 2026, for example, Congress has already funded most of the government through the end of September 30th of 2026, and agencies covering defense, education, and health are safe for now. But one department was left on the short list, which is the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS. After a brief partial shutdown that began on January 31st, because they didn't agree to everything by the end of business day, Congress passed a short-term funding bill called a continuing resolution, or CR. The CR is just a temporary patch to keep the DHS running until February 13th while negotiations continues. The current fight is over demands for reforms for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, who are murdering American citizens on the streets. I just want to throw out real quick, just for those individuals who think that Democrats are idiots, I just want to throw it out there for y'all real quick that as much as I am a Second Amendment fan, and I disagree with Democratic policies related to Second Amendment rights, they're not as dumb as you think they are, because right now the Democratic Party is fighting the Republican Party to have more stricter regulations on the Department of ICE so that they're not murdering people in the streets. The same way the Democrats were the ones that put the body cameras on the police officers so that they weren't murdering people in the streets. The same way they reinforce the public that you have the constitutional right to record government agents in active production, so for not only for your safety but also for their performance, so that you can utilize that video footage to show the judge and show supervisors and higher level individuals in police departments that certain officers in the line of duty did not perform to the magnitude of their police report. Yeah, that is all Democrat stuff. So when a lot of people don't like some of the things that Democrats do, the food stamps for poor people is out there from the Democrats. The veterans benefits are being reinforced by the Republicans, was put there by the Democrats. The Social Security that's being reinforced by the Republicans was put there by the Democrats. The health care for the lower income individuals was put there by the Democrats. When you can't afford private insurance at $800 a month, the cheaper insurance policies is part of that Obamacare plan that nobody likes, but you benefit from because you can't afford $800 a month premiums. A lot of the stuff that is put in place for the people who make less than $100,000 a year, that's there from the Democrats. So they're not really as dumb as you need both sides. You need Democrats and Republicans, because if you only have one side, a lot of policies will not make sense. But I don't agree with either side 100%. So I just want to make sure that you understand that I only pay attention to the ones that benefit me. He said, "What's the head of the Democratic? Who's the head of the Democratic Party?" I don't know. I don't know. And the reason why I don't know is because the head of the Democratic Party does not sign my benefits. I make money off of the way I invest. The only person that I know right now that negatively impacts my ability to make money is the person who's writing the bills on taxation and IRS, and that's Donald Trump. That's when he changed the taxation rules. That's the only thing that impacted me. So so we got to pay attention to that. So we have Democrats in Congress that are pushing for change, like requiring those agents to wear body cameras, banning masks. That's going to be another thing, because ICE agents have been going around with the full-on gorilla fit mask, so you cannot ID them. They're banning masks, so that means that the ICE agents that you catch on video behaving the way they behave, you can turn that video in, and then their commanding officer can detain them and discipline them for their actions, even if you can't get their because they don't have a badge number. They don't even, some of them don't even have names on their uniforms. They're just in military gear with masks on. So it's just a guy with like ice on the back of his shirt or something like that's it. That's all you know about, right? So they're banning the masks, and then they're going to be changing rules for entering private property, which is going to prevent them from just knocking down doors and running in there and kidnapping people in the middle of the night kind of thing. They're going to start treating them almost like bounty hunters, with like having that requirement for a warrant, the effort to specifically go to specific addresses and collect specific people. These things are going to be more important for the reduction of the riots, because snatching the wrong person off the street is going to have everybody in the neighborhood trying to prevent everybody else from being kidnapped. You know what I mean? He said, banning masks, then rioters should also not wear masks then too. Well, I don't know how rioters not wearing masks prevent citizens from not being unnecessarily harmed by ICE agents. They don't have, to my understanding, in all 50 states, a mandatory requirement to not wear a mask after the pandemic, because they had originally passed a mandatory mask requirement only during the COVID protocols. Typically, inside of buildings, masks were prohibited in places like banks and courthouses and stuff like that. They had to see your face and verify your identity. However, in the street, walking from one place to another or standing on a corner somewhere, there is no law that requires you to not wear a mask. So I don't know if making that a law is going to do anything, especially in cold climates, because Minnesota is not that warm. I can see you saying there's no reason to wear that mask if you were in Florida or Texas or something like that. But if you're in like Maine or New York or Minnesota or Michigan or North or South Dakota, it's fucking snowing out there. You should have a full-on mask with goggles on, and you don't know the person to the left from the person from the right because it's cold outside. However, you're not supposed to wear a mask while committing a crime. So the laws that would be in place for wearing a mask to cover your identity while in the act of violating a law will enhance whatever charge that you get. It's almost like there's no crime for wearing a body armor. However, if you are wearing a body armor while in the commission of a crime, that body armor becomes a first-degree felony. So they're not banning the civilians from wearing body armor, but you can't be shooting at your neighbor because they pissed on your car while wearing body armor. That's unsupported. So you're going to go from a discussion like a rioter that's out there rioting. Let's put up that scenario real quick. A rioter out there with stage 3 body armor on, full on mask, and they are antagonizing the police, which to a degree is your First Amendment right. As soon as they obstruct, meaning preventing the officers from getting to their destination to execute their warrant, that obstruction will then be coupled with the possession of a body armor while in commission of a crime, the whatever the charge is for the mask, and now you go from having a simple verbal altercation to two felonies and a misdemeanor, and you're sitting in a federal prison because there's no law that says that you can't do it. It just says that you cannot do it while committing a crime. I said, why would you bring your baby to a riot? As I see, okay. I want to say that there is a double standard of proper parenting, because you should have a babysitter while you are going out there to get yourself arrested. However, it is more responsible that if you couldn't afford a babysitter, that you were out there wherever you are with your child. Now, I also believe that proper parenting requires you to not be in a place that you would know to be, in any other sense of the word, dangerous, and you should not be there with your kid. So if you are a parent, you should not put yourself in a position where your freedom has been restricted from you at any point for any reason, whether it is your fault or not. When you come across this type of knowledge, you are supposed to proactively put forth the efforts to not repetitively experience this type of dynamic. So, ICE is feds. That's not police. Laws that are in place for police civilian interaction are not the same as federal civilian actions. If an ICE agent takes you to jail for enforcing a deportation executive order, you could find yourself on a domestic terrorist list. You could find yourself arrested for areas of treason. And while their accusations do not have to be fundamentally proven in a court of law, it justifies your arrest. And the problem that you will have with that is that even if they let you go, those charges will be on your arrest record, which is identified in public as a criminal history. And you will go from voicing your opinion on a public sidewalk to not being able to get a job because you are red flagged as a domestic terrorist with federal treason charges. You will have problems with getting housing in certain areas because of the charges that you got on that sidewalk. So as a parent, to prevent from having an unexpected, unauthorized arrest that will last you for the rest of your life, it is better for you to not go out there. That ain't your child they're trying to take. That ain't your relative that they're snatching up. Don't go out there. Okay? You right now in 2026, this is midterm elections, and this is the year where you vote for. If you do not like what is happening on the streets of your city and state, this is the year where you change the guards. You vote in all new people, vote out all of the existing people so that the people that are here right now causing problems are no longer here. That's your job as American citizens. Standing out on the street and stopping that Fed vehicle from getting through your neighborhood, that is not what you're supposed to do, especially since you're following a history of them throwing bricks off of overpasses and slashing tires and setting cars on fire. Y'all are setting up a stereotype. And for those of y'all that didn't grow up in black neighborhoods, I can tell you from personal experience, that type of stereotype will not go away. Every time a few hundred people show up, they're going to assume that you are the same violent group of people that set up cars on fire, that have almost killed federal agents, that have injured and hurt federal agents in the line of duty, and they're going to act with extreme violence in advance retaliation to historical events. And that's not what you want to be a part of. You want to break that stereotype, and when you see a mob forming, you need to leave. At best, call the paramedics. Call the paramedics. Get some fire engines out there. Get, you know what I mean? Call the press. Get Fox and NBC out there. Get CNN to show up. But being out there with your baby, that is not a smart move. That smart person would have stayed home. Even black people are smart enough to stay home. Well, not all of them, because didn't they arrest that little black boy? That was one of the first ones that had got detained. He got arrested. They held him for 3 days and then they let him go. I think that's when the riots started getting bad, was because they had picked up this one little black boy off the street. And I don't know why. I don't know if because usually what happens with officers and agents of the law, the people that are responsible for enforcing the law, and civilian encounter, is that they believe that they are supposed to be respected the way they're respected in the military. Yes, sir, no, sir. And if they ever get a fuck you from somebody, oh no, you can't talk to me like that. I'm going to show you because I have the authority from the president. And that's when you can't tell me what to do leads you to being in Guantanamo Bay for 6 weeks. That's not the law. That's not what they're supposed to do, and that's not how they're supposed to behave. But that's how they respond. That if you defy their instructions, even though the law says you can be 20 feet away from an arrest, they want you to be 100 feet so that they have enough time to shoot you before you run up on them and stop them from beating somebody to death the way they killed that man who allegedly had a gun. But truth is that you could be 20 feet away and when you think about how far is 20 feet away, the average living room is about 10 yards, which is about 30 feet. So uncomfortably close. If you've got two people in your house right now and one person stands on one side of the room and the other person stands on the other side of the room, that's more than 20 feet away. And that's your lawful right to stand. That's as close as you can get outside of them putting up barrier tape. That's as close as you can get to that scenario. So if you're more than 20 feet away, which a 3-foot stride, if you got a 12-foot shoe with a 3-foot stride, 20 feet away is about 15 to 20 paces. So if that cop has to take 7 to 10 steps to be inside of your 10-foot radius, you were more than 30 feet away from that incident, which means that he had no reason to communicate with you. So they cannot stop you from being there lawfully, but they will make you go 50 to 100 feet away so that you have more time, or they have more time to react to you running up on them as a threat. He says 20 feet can be there in less than a second. I know, but that's the law, though. The law says that the indication of observing government agents in the practice of their duties is 20 feet. And in some states, it's 10 feet. However, in the interest of safety, if you were 30 feet away, imagine your living room. That's the biggest room in your house. If you stand on one side of the room and your homeboy stand on the other side of the room, y'all can record each other. and see like head, feet, skyline, everything, floor, ground, all that stuff, and you see that distance, you back up to that level and say, okay, I am more than 30 feet away, and by law, I am not interfering. So my verbal communication does not prevent you from performing your job duties. I'm just observing as a member of the press. You don't require an official press pass these days. With everybody having a social media podcast, you don't necessarily have to have a press license to sit there and document ICE agents on the street, um, who are in the act of arresting Americans when their job is to only arrest non-Americans. And that job is only to extend to individuals that stop them from arresting non-Americans. However, protesters have the right to protest. Now, there's a conflict of interest there because your protest is not supposed to block their ability to get to the non-American, because that is obstruction. And that's where you throwing projectiles, cans, snowballs, whatever it is, turns into attempted assault on officers and leads to all kinds of criminal charges because they're federal agents trying to go and get a non-American. So you got to think about all of what you can do and all of what you can't do. You know, screaming obscenities from the side of the road or blaring fire horns and all this other stuff on the side of the road, and but letting them pass, that's fine. However, the smartest thing you could do is when you see 12 vehicles, dark tent, no identification marks on them, with red and blue lights on them, traveling up the road in a convoy, take your ass inside, lock the doors, close the blinds, turn off the lights, grab all your guns, and really stand guard inside your house. That is the smartest thing for you to do. and do not move until the vehicles have verified to have left your vicinity. I've said it on the show plenty of times. It should be a ghost town. It should be. It ain't, but it should be. But I mean, it really depends. It depends on what you're willing to put yourself through. Now, the political conflict that happens with this creates a political standoff, because with all of DHS funding hanging at the balance of whether or not ICE gets funding, that is going to be one of the issues that we're going to be talking about today. So if this Saturday, February 13th, is the deadline, which means that if it ain't done by Friday, is it Saturday? I believe it's Saturday. No, Friday. So Friday the 13th. Ooh, that's an unlucky number. So if by the end of business day, Friday, February 13th, we do not have a budget, it will hit a no deal scenario where only DHS would either a partial shutdown occur or funding will happen where DHS gets their money. Now, this isolates the fight because the rest of the budget has been approved. Everything else has been approved. Your food stamps has been approved. Your WIC has been approved. Your veterans benefits, everything has been approved. Your Medicaid and Medicare, all of that stuff is good right now. Your prescription drugs, everything is good. Your Section 8 vouchers, all of that stuff has been passed. The only thing that hasn't been passed is the Department of Homeland Security. But it also focuses on all 240 plus employees, and that's a lot of pain of one of our most critical agencies. Social Security checks are still going out and Medicare will continue, but the departments responsible for everything from airport screening to maritime rescue would see its funding disappear overnight. And that brings us to the main question. How can an agency tasked with protecting human life be legally ordered to stop most of its work while forcing other parts to keep working for free? And the answer is a law that's older than the light bulb. The strange logic, and we've never talked about this on the show before, this strange logic of government shutdown all comes down to a law from 1888. It is the Anti-Deficiency Act. At its core, the act is a simple rule of fiscal discipline. It forbids federal agencies from spending money that they don't have. It is illegal for a government official to sign a contract or spend money unless Congress has already approved it. So, having a massive budget with a little bit of layover on that budget that covers just in case something happens where we don't agree on time, the budget only goes so far. After the money is gone and there's no money left, that's where the gap happens and services stop, because until the money starts coming back in, there isn't any money there to pay the bill. And so it's almost like trying to set up auto pay with no money in your bank account. Until you can verify that there's money in your account, you cannot use this account for auto pay. That's what's happening. It was meant to stop agencies from running up a huge tab and then forcing Congress to pay the bill after the fact. So basically, no spending on the government credit card unless the money is already in the bank to back it up. Now, for the first hundreds of years, the law was interpreted as some possibilities for wiggle room. But in 1980, Attorney General Benjamin Civiletti issued a few legal opinions that changed everything. He argued that an anti-deficiency act had to be read strictly. So if an agency's funding runs out, it has to shut down, period. It cannot keep running on autopilot until they get the budget up and then back pay everything that was charged up. That interpretation created the modern government shutdowns that we know. But the act has a huge exception. It says that the government cannot accept voluntary services, meaning employees cannot just work for free because they want to. So in a situation where you really love your job, it really benefits whatever you're doing, like it's your pride and joy. There's a lot of us have done this plenty of times before and be like, I'll work off the clock because I have pride in what I do, right? Soldiers will do it. Blue collar workers will do it. Come in for work early off the clock and put in some help to help the team out of good faith, right? Stay at work late, clock out so that you don't go into overtime, but still help them get the job done as extra free labor manpower. That is what the government is saying. He said that America should not be in debt. I'm gonna leave that up there for a second. So the law says that you're not supposed to voluntarily work for free just because you want to. And it's going to make the exception there for emergency services involving safety of human lives or the protection of property. So law enforcement's got to work even if there's no pay. Medical providers, firefighters, defense and safety have to work. They are decided as essential. Now, with what you're saying, Michael, is that we shouldn't be in debt, assuming that we're not supposed to spend more than what we have. Well, see, the budget that we're talking about is who all gets paid. And that Anti-Deficiency Act is to not pay a bunch of people for service that we don't have money to back up. So this bill, the shutdown, is basically about payroll. Ultimately, that's what it's about. It is about payroll. It's not just payroll, because you have services like food stamps and Section 8 and VA bill and Social Security disability. But again, when you think about it, it is still a form of payroll. How much money you get from your food assistance is your allotted payroll for the month. How much you get for your Section 8 housing is your payroll for the month. How much you're going to get for your veterans benefits or your disability, it's payroll. Each person gets a check. That's payroll. So the deficit that we have, the 1.6, $1.5 trillion deficit, is not all payroll. We have construction that is part of our deficit. We have import exports of goods and services that is part of our deficit. Um, there's a lot of things that I can't even think about off the top of my head that is part of our deficit in addition to payroll. Research and development for the military bill is one of the biggest things, because think about the $600 billion that Donald Trump is putting towards the construction of the wall, out the wall and the golden dome of America that he's building, right? All of those satellites in the sky. That $600 billion out of the $1.6 trillion, there's still another $1 trillion of debt there if he didn't finish that wall. See what I'm saying? So we're in debt because of the construction, the research and development, but the salary, the payroll, that's the annual budget that we talk about, and that's where the shutdown comes from. Do I get paid today? Whether it's food stamps, whether it's Social Security, veterans benefits, whether if I'm a federal agent and that's my annual my biweekly salary for going to work every day, do I get paid today? That is payroll. So that's a little bit different from the total debt that the country wields. But the country likes to sell that debt to China. China's got a lot of shares in government bonds. But this one phrase is going to be key to the whole paradox, because it's going to create two categories of federal employees: the essential emergency must stay employees and the non-essential employees that must stay their ass at home. So during a shutdown, essentials doesn't mean more important than anybody else. It just means that your job is legally required to protect human life and property, and that means that you've got to be here whether you want to or not. So these employees are going to be called accepted or expected to be functioning from the shutdown, right? They aren't volunteering. They are legally required to come to work. And even though they're not getting paid, there's no money involved, they're going to probably get reimbursed after the fact, but they have to go to work regardless. So when a shutdown looms, every agency follows its contingency plan. And these plans list every job and sort them into categories. Category 1 is going to be those expected or essential staff members. And for DHS, this is going to include almost all of the frontline workers: TSA officers at the airports, customs and border protection officers at the ports of entry, border patrol agents, Coast Guard crews, and the Secret Service. And in the past shutdowns, this has been nearly 3/4 of the entire DHS workforce. In category 2, yeah, forced servitude. That's exactly, it's mandatory, government approved, constitutionally enforced forced servitude. And I love the way you use the political correct term of forced servitude, because some individuals would have jumped up and said, that's slavery. I mean, so is unpaid internships and community service works and volunteered services. I mean, you have the difference between forced servitude and voluntary servitude in both unpaid fashions. Yes. Now, here's the funny part though. A lot of jobs have that PTO time. Now, if you're the kind of person that stacks up on your PTO time and you keep it closer to the max, you're the kind of person that the first 2 weeks of the shutdown, as a non-essential person, you could cash in your PTO time and get your one more check. and not have to worry about it. You know what I mean? Cash in your PTO time for that 2 weeks and one more check. Cash in your vacation time during the shutdown and one more check. And then you'd be good to go. But everybody else, you kind of just stuck. But these employees are going to be furloughed if they're non-essential. So hold on. The second category is going to be the non-accepted or non-essential staff, and those are going to be the employees that are going to be furloughed, which is a fancy word for being sent home and legally forbidden from doing any work, which is a nice way of suspended without pay. Closest thing to being fired. They can't check work emails, they can't make work calls or volunteer to finish up any projects at all. They cannot, and that includes science work or anything like that. They cannot do anything that requires them that or entitles them to any kind of compensation. And this group is usually made up of people in administrative roles, policy analysis, researchers, and trainers. Their work is vital long term, but it is not seen as immediately necessary to protect life and property. And there's also a third category, employees paid from a different money pot. The best example is U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, or USCIS. Woo. This agency is mostly fee funded. The money to process green cards and citizenship applications come from the fees people pay, not from Congress. So during a DHS shutdown, most USCIS employees keep working and, crucially, keep getting paid because the money is already there to cover them. This legal maze explains how the borders stay open to take visas in during a government shutdown. The CBP officers checking your passport is an accepted employee, mandatorily required to be there. But what about the Anti Deficiency Act, which doesn't do anything to provide the money to pay that officer to go to work, right? Well, it's going to create a legal duty to work, but no way to get paid during the funding gap. There's going to be essential workers on an IOU format from the government where you'll get paid eventually. can I borrow a hamburger from you today that I'll gladly pay you tomorrow? Acronyms, there's so many of these bitches. Boy, I tell you what, when I do research, I be sitting over here like, fuck. The alphabet boy. Whew. So while in 2019, there was a law that guarantees that these essential workers will get back pay eventually whenever the government comes back into action. But that doesn't help them pay their mortgage or buy groceries right now during the shutdown. This is the bizarre reality. Not technically working for free, but working without current pay. And that reality has consequences for everyone, because when a funding gap hits DHS, because of ICE, it doesn't just turn off the lights, it turns the massive agency into a kind of ghost ship, still sailing, but with only a skeleton crew. And the department's own contingency plans give us a clear blueprint of who stays and who goes. Now, this is wild and crazy, because as I get through this, you'll come to find that there was a budget set aside by Donald Trump from the big beautiful bill that pays ICE specifically for the deportation efforts. That budget still exists through the shutdown. It is not part of the shutdown. So they can still operate even if DHS shuts down. Even though the ICE budget is in that discussion, the ICE department has advanced funding. So they're not going to stop working during the shutdown. The airports will stop working, but the people on the street with the tanks that are messing with the kids on the street, they're not going to stop working because they are, there's a budget for them. There's an advancement separate from the stuff that they're talking about right now. Now, in 2 or 3 years, yeah, ICE will be included in, but if the big beautiful bill gave them 12 months of funding for deportation starting in August of last year, that's supposed to run through September of this year, ICE is not going to be negatively impacted by funding until September of this year. So if the government shuts down to prevent future funding after the budget runs out in Q3 of 2026, then TSA agents in February of 2026 doesn't get paid, but ICE agents get paid in March of 2026. That's a conflict of interest because budgets are coming from different places. That's that funding from other sources thing that we were just talking about. But when we start separating these, let's start with the most viable ones. The Transportation Security Administration, TSA. Those TSA screens are going to be about 2.5 million passengers on average every day, and that mission is considered essential. So the screeners that you see at every airport checkout are expected to be there even if they're not getting paid. So after Friday, if you were not being nice to the people who check your bags in and scan your ID and walk you through that metal detector to get you to the airplane area where you got to sit, you need to be nice to them after Friday. If you're not nice to them before Friday, they should get so much thank you for your service Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and still they get their damn paycheck. Thank you for your service. You should give it to them every time you go to the airport. Thank you for your service. Like really tell them thank you because you can't buy them shit because most of it's going to get confiscated on your way to the plane. But you at least let these people know that you appreciate the fact that they are forced against their will to show up for work even though they're not going to get a paycheck. And just in October they didn't get a paycheck for almost 8 weeks. So thank them come Saturday when this shit's still shut down. Thank them for still coming to work every day so that you can get on your airplane every day on time so that you can keep paying your bills. Because a lot of them folks, as Cameron had asked earlier today about going to college, a lot of them TSA agents did not go to college to be sitting there scanning your luggage. There is no radiology degree that you need to look at a computer that is x-raying a bag. A high school dropout could have got them jobs. So them essential workers who might actually have student debt, who can't pay for their student loans because they stopped getting paid by the feds, thank them for going to work every day. I just want a public service announcement, okay? Because they have to show up. Their supervisors have to show up, but their paychecks are going to stop. And while their front lines are going to be staffed, their support systems behind the scenes are going to fall apart. Training for new screeners is going to halt, and the rollout of new security techs can be delayed. The checkpoint is going to be open, but the agency's ability to improve is going to be frozen. Next up is going to be customs and border protection, which includes Border Patrol and the officers at official ports of entry. Their jobs are law enforcement and counterterrorism. So they are overwhelmingly accepted. The agents on the southern border and the officers expecting cargo and the passengers all keep working without pay. And that's more than 19,000 Border Patrol agents and 25,000 officers working unpaid. The flow of people and goods continues, but the workforce securing it is thrown into a financial chaos. So you worrying about how you're going to pay your mortgage while you making sure that this ain't cocaine in this flour bag. You know what I'm saying? Distractions. pay your salary if you look the other way. That's how bribery starts. Then you have that Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. This is one that is a bit more complicated because many ICE key functions like detention and investigation are often funded by multi-year budgets, which is what happened with the big beautiful bill, that aren't part of the annual fight. Because of this, many ICE employees would not only keep working during the DHS shutdown, but they're also going to keep getting paid. Some of them, up until they actually started addressing that, would be getting a $40,000 bonus on top of their regular salary every year. So those of you that are working on a job that's paying you $40,000 to $45,000 for a full year of work, $55,000 for overtime for a full year of work, ICE agents are getting a $40,000 bonus. Your whole annual salary, they're getting that as a bonus on top of their annual salary. That's like double pay. What kind of, I don't even know, Michael, how much does the annual salary for an ICE agent turn out to be? Because I didn't even look that up. But when I found that out, I was like, what the hell? They're getting a $40,000 budget. That better be a $250,000 salary. But they were talking about in the White House or Congress or whatever, they were talking about the $40,000 um bonus, and I was like, what? Look, then my screen froze. Hold on, let me do this the other way. Let me minimize that and then do this the other way. uh See, Mike, you were supposed to be diving in with facts and information. So what is the average salary for an ICE agent? I just want to cover that real quick when we start talking about how they're getting that $40,000 bonus. All right, so check this out. As of February 2026, the average annual salary for an Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent in the United States is approximately $62,702 a year, which is $30.15 an hour. And salaries are typically ranging from $49,000 to over $82,000 based on experience, location, and seniority, with federal pay scales GL7 to GS13 for entry-level agents, starting at around $48,372 to $77,210. Now, with that knowledge, they are starting off at as low as $49,000, getting a $40,000 bonus. That is double pay. And on those areas where they're getting 82, because every agent is getting it, not just some, every agent is getting it. And then you're looking at 82,000, and they're going to get another 40,000. That's 1/3 of their, or 50% of their income is going to be added. So they're going to get a 30% increase on their pay. That's crazy. What job has, most of you that's watching the show right now, what job have you worked on recently where you went from making your $15, $20, $30 an hour to making double that without having to put in overtime? Like, when has your boss ever gave you an annual salary of twice as much as what you signed on for? I ain't talking about a dollar raise, because if you're looking at $49,000, you're looking at, because these guys on average are getting anywhere between $18 and $30 an hour, and they're getting double pay. So now they're going to start getting, with that bonus, an average of like $60 an hour. That's crazy. And that's a multi-year projection for the ICE agents. So when I heard that, I was like, whoa, fuck that. They should not be mad on the streets, murdering people in the streets, if they're making double pay Michael was trying to make that excuse the last time we talked about this, talk about some hazard pay. And I'm like, fuck hazard pay. Hazard pay is when your life is in danger. What danger was your life in when there was 6-on-1, when they was beating that boy to death until the gun came out? The alleged gun came out, because I didn't see a gun. People say there was a gun, but I didn't see a gun. I heard a shot, and then I heard a bunch of more shots, but I didn't see the gun come out when I was watching that video. Yeah, I pay attention, y'all. I pay attention. So this is going to create a weird situation where the CBP agents and the ICE agents could be working on similar missions, but one is getting a paycheck and the other isn't. Probably the CBP agents, pissed off, start acting ridiculous with the public, and then the ICE agents who are getting paid to be there, calm, cool, and collective, are able to draw down and start taking shots, because that's what they do. They suppress hostile entities. They don't, and when I say suppress, they're not calm down, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about this. They are bow 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 bow. Sit down. They're hitting you like state property. Get down and lay down. Anybody who watched State Property with Beans, you know what I'm talking about. You get down and lay down. The U.S. Coast Guard, USCG, is another critical piece. As the branch of the Army or armed forces is national security missions, search and rescue missions, port security, and some law enforcement at sea. They are expected to be at work on a regular basis. So the cutters stay at sea, and the helicopters are ready to fly. But just like their colleagues on land, they work without pay. And this is going to be a huge blow to morale for a service where people are often deployed for long periods of time, and their family is depending on this income. The U.S. Secret Service, USSS, followed the same rules in its main job of protecting the president and other leaders. Uh, it's a non-negotiable. So those protective detail continue, and the agents are expected to be at work without pay. It is a surreal scenario. So you are going to get gunned down on behalf of the president. He's getting paid because Congress gets paid, the president gets paid, the president's a billionaire, but you are broke. And you will get shot up for him. And if you're still alive after the fact, you will get reimbursed, hopefully, on an eventual standard. That is the scenario. Okay? Because these people are guarding the nation's leaders and are also worrying about how many of them are going to be capable of making their next car payment, paying for child support, whatever else they got going on. Now, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, which nobody likes FEMA until like a national disaster comes through, they have a split personality in the shutdown, because immediate disaster response is funded by a separate disaster relief fund. So FEMA can still respond to new emergencies like hurricanes or floods or some shit like that. But their other functions grind to a halt. Payments for long-term recovery projects from past disasters are going to stop. The national flood insurance programs might not be able to issue new policies. So while FEMA can handle in immediate crisis, its ability to help communities rebuild after the crisis is severely limited. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agencies, CISA, is our nation's shield against digital threats. Its core job, monitoring for cyber attacks and responding to them. This is considered essential. The analyst tracking foreign threats are accepted, but all of CISA's proactive work gets paused. Whatever projects that they were working on, can't do it anymore. Training sessions with local governments are canceled, and risk assessments are postponed. The part of CISA that builds long-term cyber defense goes dark, leaving only the emergency response team active. And finally, as we mentioned, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, is the big exception. Since it is funded by fees, it's going to operate almost normally. So people can still file for green cards and citizenship, and those applications get processed. The e-verify system that employers use also stays online. And I want to talk about that real quick before we go any further, because since you can still file for your visa, since you can still file for your citizenship, even though your behind is overdue, you have capabilities to set up citizenship documents during the government shutdown. Now, there is some requirements for some people to get their ass kicked out of the country, but you can try to find ways, getting an immigration lawyer and all of these other things where paperwork could be put up on your behalf to not get deported, right? Because they actually still have legal cases right now that are preventing people from getting deported. If you're getting your citizenship, if you're trying to get your citizenship, right? But if you forgot to do your paperwork in America, when they tell you to get out, you get out and you can't come back for 10 years, which is a lot different than other countries where you just have to leave, do the paperwork, and then come back. The easiest one that I've heard of is the Philippines, where if it's a rollover situation. So if you're about to expire, if you start doing the paperwork before it expires, you can get approved before it expires, and it just rolls over to another 3, 6, 9, 12 months. You don't have to worry about leaving and have extended stay, but you have to get your paperwork done early. So it's not like Americans who have vehicle registration and your registration can lapse and you don't do anything about it for a little bit, where laws exist now that a month or two after your registration lapses that you don't have to worry about. Either the vehicle registration or your driver's license, where you don't have to rush down to the DMV and get it done. You can get it done eventually. That it doesn't work that way with citizenship. Citizenship is the legal authorization from the government for you to be in the country. And once that timeline elapses, you are supposed to already be gone, not getting ready to leave. So if you're planning on staying, you are supposed to put forth the extra effort to come into the country or stay in the country by doing the paperwork correctly. If you're on that citizenship process or you're on that green card process where you're allowed to maintain residency in the process of getting your citizenship, where citizenship is usually like 10 years or longer, and green cards can run you 6 to 10 years, and residency can be afforded to you. Temporary residency can be afforded to you, and long-term permanent residency can be afforded to you throughout that 10 to 20-year process. Half your life you could be trying to become a citizen, but you're legally allowed to stay, so you're not getting shipped out. That's a huge difference. And they got people who are on green cards. They're flying back and forth with no problem. They got houses and apartments in California that they don't have to worry about ICE. They be high-fiving ICE on their way to work every day. You know what I mean? But there are some who refuse to do it. And I don't understand why, but they refuse to do it. And then when they come and kick on your door to evict you out of the country, you want to resist them like them folks that their car get repossessed and they want to fight the repo man. Like, bro, all you had to do was just pay the note. You trying to fight this dude because he got paid to come and take your stuff. You can't even call the police. He's got a contract to come and take the situation. These guys got a warrant to come and take you. There's nothing you can do about that. You have to cooperate. So there's no reason why we're protesting in the streets to prevent federal agents from coming to acquire people who refuse to follow the rules. There's no reason for that. And that's an issue that not a lot of people think about when they're out there protesting. But across DHS, the story is going to be the same scenario. The jobs needed for immediate safety continue, but the people doing them aren't getting paid. And all the work that supports them is not going to be getting paid either. training, planning, HR, research, all of that's going to stop cold. So sexual harassment complaints gonna have to wait until the government's not shut down anymore. And this is gonna create an agency running on fumes. Now, DHS is not ICE. ICE is part of DHS on its own budget. So DHS is not getting paid while ICE is getting paid on a multi-year contract. Um, and they're able to handle today's crises, but a lot of these people are going to be losing the ability to prepare for tomorrow's crisis. Now, behind the legal jargon and contingency plans, there's a real human cost because this is forcing hundreds of thousands of people to work without pay, which isn't some abstract economic event. Okay? It is a personal crisis that hits families everywhere. It tanks morale and it can even threaten our security. Imagine you're a TSA officer, you get up for dawn, before dawn, right? You're standing out there for hours, dealing with stressed travelers and screening for threats. Now imagine doing all of that, knowing that your bank account is running on empty and your next paycheck has been canceled indefinitely with no um, observed probability of when it will be reinstated. And this was that reality during the 35-day shutdown in 2018 and 2019. And this was the reality in the, what was it, 46 or 48-day shutdown in 2026. The financial strain is immense. Mortgages are still due, car payments don't stop, and childcare costs don't care about deadlocks in Congress. During that record long shutdown, the strain became obvious because the rate of TSA officers calling in sick shot up, hitting 10% on some days. And these weren't organized protests. They were individual acts of desperation. Some officers couldn't afford gas to get to work. So they called out. And even if they don't get the paycheck right now, if you can't go to work and you use a PTO day to stay home for a few days because you don't have the gas money, you use your PTO days. You know, others had to pick up side gigs like driving for Uber just to make ends meet. And this leads to longer security lines at major airports and, in some cases, closed checkpoints where they can't utilize them because they don't have enough manpower to facilitate them. This is going to be a perfect example of how a political fight in Washington directly messes with your travel plans. And it messes with your paycheck if you're working in the airport, right? And it's not just TSA. Think of the Coast Guard families. One spouse might be on a cutter at sea while their partner at home is trying to manage the bills with no income. Or a border patrol agent in a remote town whose family depends on completely on the federal paycheck, and these aren't high-paying jobs. And many federal workers live paycheck to paycheck, like millions of other Americans. So a shutdown forces them into impossible choices: taking on debt, burn through savings, or even going to food banks to pick up extra food and resources. The effects on morale is going to be toxic. And these are the public servants that swore an oath to protect the country. And during a shutdown, they are used as political leverage. This creates resentment and makes it harder for the government to recruit and retain good people in the long run, because there's only so many times that you're going to not get paid from this job before you be like, fuck this. I could have still been getting paid as a mall security guard or something. One of those Walmart guards with the AR-15 in California stopping people from stealing Cheerios out the grocery aisle. I could have got paid for that instead of doing this, right? So after that 2018-2019 shutdown, where more and more TSA agents were quitting, why would you choose a career where your income can be switched off at any time? right? The non-essential employees sent home face their own struggles because they're left in limbo, unsure when they'll be called back to work. This halt in their work has real consequences because the people who write policies, analyze intelligence, and procure new technology are all sitting at home. They're not capable of finding another job because they are already employed. They're just not being paid. It is possible to try to obtain unemployment, but it usually takes 6 weeks to get that started. So, since you have a job, even how do you get unemployment compensation when you're technically not unemployed? You're just suspended without pay. You know, their projects are going to be frozen and their expertise are going to be wasted. But when the government finally reopens, there's going to be a massive backlog of work. And these people are going to be frustrated because they have to do side gigs like Postmates and Uber Eats and all this other stuff to try to make ends meet until they can get back to work. And we're recognizing that that's going to be delaying vital modernization for months to come. Now, federal contractors are also going to get hit hard. And I've talked about this before. Many small businesses depend on government contracts. And during the shutdown, payments for completed work are often going to be delayed, forcing them to lay off their own employees. So the contractor has to not pay their workers. And it's going to be a ripple effect throughout the economy where that pain is going to be spread far and beyond the federal workforce. So a shutdown that forces people to work without pay is a gamble with national security, and it assumes that these professionals can perform high stress jobs at 100% performance while under extreme financial distress. And history shows us that is a bad bet. The system is designed to keep the front lines legally running, but it ignores the human reality that a person worried about feeding their family might not be the most effective guardian at the gate, right? And I don't understand why they do not have a multi-year budget for the employees of this country where their defense budget can be rediscussed at a later date and time. Certain people like TSA agents and you know what I mean, the certain individuals that are literally putting in effort to keep us safe should not be with us. I can't say everybody should get a paycheck on a regular basis, but they should have contingencies in place where the essential workers are getting paid, even if the furloughed workers are not. There should not be a situation where the essential workers do not have a budget. And since we recognize that in these performances for government funding, that they're looking at 2 months observably of lapses in government budgets and government funding, they should be working on an 18-month payment plan, which gives them 6 months to figure this crap out before they run out of funding for that particular department. That would be my observation. Because from October to January is what? Almost 6 months. Because you got the last 3 months of quarter 4 and the first 3 months of quarter 5 come March. That's 6 months that they could have figured this out so that come April, everything's smooth. And our TSA agents would not be not getting paid. That would be my observation. But I'm only one of what would have been 500 and something votes in Congress. So you're finding this breakdown of our government bizarre, the where I talk about the mechanics, and you believe that these mechanics that we're discussing is useful to you, and it helps you understand and gather more information for you to do research and make changes and make improvements. Make sure that you take a second to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we realize that releasing these videos like this every day will explain the complex systems that shape our world. And your support to help us spread the word to everybody else will allow us to keep doing this kind of in-depth analysis, and it'll help us reach a broader spectrum of individuals that are trying to learn and grow and improve for themselves. And then when you have the opportunity, go ahead and hit that notification button, because by hitting that notification button whenever we go live, whether you're watching us on Twitter, Twitch, or YouTube long form or YouTube shorts, you guys would be able to be notified when we go live, the moment we go live, because a lot of the times there's a lot of topics that we talk about that might help you change the way you do things in the immediate. So back to the main issue. When you step back, the irony is going to be pretty staggering. The political fight that could shut down the Department of Homeland Security is all about how to enforce immigration and border policies. And yet, the very people who would suffer the most are the frontline Border Patrol, CBP, and the, I'm going to say, ICE officers that are in charge of the policies. But ICE agents are technically on like a multi-year contract that's already been pre-funded from the big beautiful bill, so they're not going to really hurt that much. Not all of the ICE agents are going to hurt. Some of them that are not out on the streets snatching folks up off the sidewalk and murdering people in the streets, those are guys who are going to get paid. Their budget's already set. But the other people behind the scenes doing the paperwork, probably those officers are going to end up being negatively impacted. Right, the person who reads the report and turns it in, that person's going to be negatively impacted. But the people out on the block in the SUVs with the masks on and the military fatigues, those guys, oh yeah, they're getting paid regardless. I don't understand what happened there, but that's what that is. So in a political battle over how to best secure the border, the first move is to stop paying the people who actually secure it, right? you need to change your position. Instead of not paying the people who protect the border, you need to stop paying the politicians who controls how the border gets protected. Because since they're the ones that are not making a decisive decision, their paychecks will stop if they don't make a decision. Personally, I think that should be the way things are operating. Not me in the White House. But if I would have been, if I would have been in the House or the Senate, that would have been my position. But this isn't just ironic. It is a symptom of a much larger political dysfunction. So government shutdowns that are used to be way back in the past, constitutional crisis as a rare crisis. Now they've become a routine tool for political negotiations, and it is like every 2 or 3 months, every quarter almost. So because we had it in quarter 4, and we have another one in quarter 1, and we're going to have another one in quarter 4. So be prepared for that, which is why I give you guys ways to make, save, and invest money so that you have extra money on the sidelines. Because if you're not going to quit your Fed job, you're not going to quit your government funded job, you need to make sure that you have a backup plan for government funds, because like they get this budget under control and our funding is good through September. That means that come October 1st, any funding that hasn't been pre-approved, like for example, veteran funding and Social Security funding is going to be running through September 30th. If they validate and verify that stuff now, where they're good for the next 18 months, then their October budget is not going to be impacted. They're still going to get their money. They're still going to get their VA budgets. They're still going to get their Social Security budgets, but everybody else is not going to get paid. See what I'm saying? So there is a way for certain industries to receive their income. With the longest U.S. history shutdown being that 45-day shutdown in October, which also caused another fight over budgets, security funding. They had a different one back in 2018, 2019 that was also about security funding, but that one was a 35-day shutdown, and we had a 45-day one in 2025. We come to find out that what was once unthinkable is now just part of political playbooks. That this is going to be a trend, and this trend has a serious consequence. It's going to erode public trust in the government. It's going to erode the desire to become a government agent, because you will more often than not get paid. And those individuals who live a life of auto pay, because you're working as a Fed, you wake up, you go to work, you go to bed, you at work sometimes, because you're as a salary employee, you're at the job whenever you're at the job, because your job doesn't necessarily have a specific location, especially if you're part of the CIA and you're going wherever the president goes. You just keep living until your car gets declined. That's it. You just keep living until your car gets declined. You wear the same suit or the same kind of suit every day, and you keep wearing it until you go to the dry cleaners, and you can't get your clothes out of the dry cleaners. You know what I mean? That's what it is, right? It creates chaos that makes long-term planning impossible for federal agents if you are not preparing for guaranteed and expected repetitive shutdowns, which requires you to start making a different kind of budget. You need to be able to make a shutdown budget, not just an emergency fund. You have to have an emergency fund that covers 6 months worth of essentials, but you also have to have a shutdown budget that covers 2 months, because that's what we're looking at right now, is the average of 1 to 2 months of shutdown twice a year. And you have to put enough money aside to cover those failures from the government, in addition to unexpected expenses. And this is what's going to treat hundreds of thousands of dedicated public servants like pawns in a political game. So the paradox of a DHS shutdown reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of what security actually means, because while DHS isn't getting funded, ICE has a multi-year contract, and ICE is going to operate after February 13th, even though DHS is not going to get any funding, because the Democrats want the Republicans to force the ICE agents to wear body cams and take off the masks so that you can identify the unnecessary and unethical behavior of certain ICE agents. Not necessarily all of the ICE agents are doing a bad job. You just have a handful of officers that should not be on the street. And if they could identify them based on an anonymous video that is turned in from a public servant, not a public servant, but a civilian observer that saw this ICE agent acting out of sorts, and you turn that into the government and say, hey, your agents are on the street beating people up. Look, this is what they look like. I don't know what their name is. I was like 50 feet away, but you can zoom in on this video and identify that officer and get him into your office and figure out what the hell he was thinking and put a stop to that type of behavior. Because what we're not saying that they can't do their jobs, because a police officer can arrest a man without beating him to death. An ICE agent can arrest protesters without beating them to death. I understand that you're angry, and I understand that the crowd is pissing you off. But at the end of the day, you are in a position where you are supposed to remain calm at all times, the same way you're supposed to reasonably remain calm at all times on a battlefield. You are not supposed to be on your own home turf killing your neighbors because you're mad at them, because they don't even know who you are. You got a mask on. You need to take that mask off and be like, Joe, it's me. Stop throwing rocks at me, bro. But at the same time, the lack of accountability comes from your ability to put on a mask for your job and run out there like an armed militia, threatening the safety of people, because what are they going to do about it since they don't know who did it? Which kind of brings back to the Michael's question when he asked, well, why don't they make it mandatory that the protesters don't wear masks? There is no law. The law says that if you're committing a crime with a mask on, you're going to get in more trouble than what you would if you committed the crime itself. So while there isn't a law that prevents you from wearing a mask in most states, the fact is that if you are wearing a mask while in the commission of a crime, you're going to get way worse consequences than when you get caught than what you would if you wasn't wearing a mask. But those people who don't like Big Brother with the CCTV cameras all over the place, you gotta understand. If they had CCTV cameras everywhere, they would have seen the person pull the mask over their face before they walked into the fight, and they could identify the person before they pulled the mask down. But then, if they had cameras everywhere, your privacy would be extremely violated. You have to give up something to get something. You're not supposed to sacrifice your safety for civil liberties, and you're not supposed to sacrifice your civil liberties for security. But you have to understand that your right to privacy is going to be impeded upon to some degree in order for you to have the right to have security monitor that area. Because if your privacy is caught on camera, that's on you. You're going to have to legally tinted windows on your car so they can't see what you're doing in your car. You're gonna to have legally tinted windows on your house with your blinds down and shutters closed, no sunlight coming into your house. Because if no sunlight can come into your house, no video recording can come out of your house. You just gotta do the right thing, in order instead of having your windows open and getting natural sunlight to save money on your Tico bill, where that camera down the street is recording you walking around your house naked. You gotta close your blinds, close your windows, and let them put the cameras up all over the place. Because that's how they can find the person with the mask that did what they were supposed to do, because they can backtrack camera footage to where that person was before that person pulled their mask over their face. So there's got to be a little bit of give and take there. But the paradox of the DHS shutdown is going to reveal a fundamental misunderstanding of what security actually means. And this is true because the Anti-Deficiency Act ensures a guard stays at their post. But real security isn't just about having a person in a uniform. And we see that in Minnesota on a regular basis. It is about a well trained and well equipped and well motivated workforce. These uniformed officers are supposed to be trained to not only be able to execute their mission, but to also be able to conduct themselves with discipline, more discipline than the average uncivilized civilian. Okay, they're supposed to be able to react and respond to irrational behavior with logic and reason, not executing an action and then putting out a report because they thought that nobody knew. We're in an era of technology. You need a body camera on for your own personal safety as an ICE agent. But truth be told, body cameras should be widely sold, and every civilian should have one on their person so that they're not holding their cell phone in the midst of this situation. If you could get a body camera that backs up data directly to the cloud, where even if they snatched your equipment off, that you still had a document of what happened so that you can show it later on, that would be safer for you as Americans than the situation that we've got now, where we're at the mercy of what they write on paper. Because what is written on paper is taken to be the truth, even if it's not. Right? And when certain documents are misrepresented and video footage comes out and shows something different than what was written down, until the video footage shows up, they're going to treat it as a justified action. And one of the worst things that we have, it is not corrupt people in these positions. One of the worst things that we have is undertrained individuals that make a bad decision and then they try to cover it up with the help of a seasoned veteran that will say, hey, just write the report like this, and they will validate it. Instead of, bro, you should have done that, court martial. You understand? There is a right and a wrong way to do things. the difference between ethics and morals is not much, but there is a little bit of difference. And it is unethical to write a report that reflects something different than the actual actions. And government agents, lawyers, judges, feds, police, congressmen have a higher responsibility for authenticity than the average civilian. And there is no reason why these things are not being addressed. There's no reason why these things are not being addressed. So, when we look and talk about smart policies, cutting edge research, and a system that works smoothly together, we're talking about more efficiency in the ability to keep each other safe. Because our Constitution is a very, very broad spectrum Constitution. You have the right to say and do whatever you want, however you want, as long as what you're doing does not cause unnecessary harm to someone else or someone else's stuff. And the problem with that right, that freedom, is that your right to do something is conflicted with their right to tell you to stop it. You understand? Your right to refuse to stop it contradicts their right to make you stop it. Because your right to say what you want to say conflicts with their right to not have to listen to it. Now, the problem that we have is that the person who doesn't want to hear this has the right to leave. And that's what the ICE agents and a lot of law enforcement officers don't understand. While we as American citizens have the right to shout at the top of our lungs the most obscene things that you can say in a country to its officials, you don't got to take that. You can leave. The person you came to arrest, ignore the crowd, arrest that person, get in a car, and drive away. So fighting the crowd is not necessary. Now, when they start throwing stuff, rocks, bottles, cans, Molotovs, that's when the tear gas comes out. That's when the rubber bullets come out. That's when the fire hoses start coming out. But we should not be in a situation right now in 2026 where Americans are losing their lives because we don't like the fact that other Americans are deporting non-Americans. We shouldn't be in that situation. And we should not be in a government shutdown right now because the Republican Party disagrees with the Democratic Party that the ICE agents should have the same advanced level body camera equipment as local law enforcement. I don't even know why that shit got delayed. It's like, bro, make them put on some body cameras and make them take off their masks so that they can be identified, so that their actions can be documented on video, so that if an incident occurs, we can get first person view of what went down. Because the video of the guy getting beat to death does not show what he caused to get beat. It does not show what caused him getting shot. It just shows him being jumped by police, by agents, by federal agents, and then shows him being gunned down by those federal agents. But what he did to cause that would have been on a first person body cam from the agents that was engaging him before the detainment began. And if it turns out to have been justified because of his refusal to be detained, and if he would have dropped his gun and reached for that gun during an arrest, and that would have justified him being shot, I mean, the first person body cameras would have painted a better picture. The lady that got gunned down in her car, the first person body cam of the vehicle driving away from the officer, not to the officer, would have probably shown that the officer did not have a reason to shoot the car. While he did have a reason to pursue the vehicle, He didn't have a reason to shoot the car. And being held responsible for the decisions that you make in the moment, while immunity for any agent that is acting under the color of law, immunity is limited to justifiable actions in the enforcement of the law. Overwhelming force is not qualified immunity. Unnecessary actions and behaviors are not qualified by immunity. Only the actions necessary to enforce the law and execute any lawful enforcement of any kind, like a court order or a warrant or something to that effect, an arrest or something to that effect, whatever effort is necessary. If it wasn't necessary, if it was above and beyond the expectations of how to get that done, that is supposed to require consequence and discipline, which would deter future officers and ICE agents from performing in that same dynamic, which reduces and eliminates unnecessary situations that are misunderstandings that leads to the loss of life. So the budget, the shutdown, all spiraled out of control because these guys are not acting right. Because had they not had 2 murders in less than 3 months that of American citizens, we would not have had a shutdown because they would not have had an excuse. The budget would have been approved. DHS got beef from Congress because of them 2 deaths, right? So when a shutdown comes out, it destroys the system. It stops the training. It freezes tech upgrades. It crushes the morale. And it tells our most experienced people that their financial stability is expendable. Just a cog in a wheel. So while the lights may stay on at the border crossing, the agency itself is being hollowed out from the inside out. So while the title of tonight's show sounds like a contradiction, it is the literal truth. In the uniquely American spectacle of a partial government shutdown, Homeland Security can be shut down and the border can still be open in every way that involves planning, administration, and paying its bills. And yet, thanks to that legal loophole from the 19th century, the border was going to stay open regardless of the shutdown of administrative works. And it's going to be manned by a workforce that is required by law to protect the country, even when their own government has failed to protect them. So, when the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, shuts down again, it's nothing like you'd imagine. It's not a free-for-all where the gates are thrown open, the airports are left unguarded. Thanks to the strange and powerful logic of the Anti-Deficiency Act, our most visible security functions will stay in place, but where the TSA agents, the Border Patrol, and the Coast Guards are all going to keep working, or at least most of them. But that's only half the story. The reality is going to be far more damaging. It's a reality where a skeleton crew operates a ghost ship, where the frontline agents work without pay, and where the long-term health of our security agencies is sacrificed for short-term political gains. It's a bizarre situation where the people tasked with protecting the country become the primary casualties of political dysfunction. And the system on paper ensures our security continues, but in practice, it slowly eats away at whatever security that we would have had from the inside. So, what do you think about the system? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives that explain how our government works, or in some cases doesn't work, make sure that you take the time to like and subscribe to the channel. Hit that follow button if you're watching us on Twitch or Twitter, and stay tuned for all of the updates that we have with all of the other issues that we covered that impacts your ability to make, save, and invest money. With that being said, I'm going to start off by saying, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to keep asking you, ladies, to make it make sense. So, ladies, please make it make sense. And then, fellas, I give you all this information to help you become higher value men. Because when you are able to focus on the things that are inside of your control that you don't like, that need to be changed, you can proactively put forth the effort to change that. And then the things in your life that you cannot control, like these government shutdowns, you can navigate around it. And ladies, while this is a male-driven podcast from the male's perspective, you too can utilize this information to make yourselves higher value women by finding your 20-year plan, proactively putting forward first-person actions and efforts into achieving that 20-year plan. And when you engage with other individuals, you see if you can find you a partner that would match your ambitions for your 20-year plan, and then you can incorporate that person into your future plans, and y'all can achieve those plans twice as fast. Because when two individual people are headed in the same direction, they come together and they're heading that same direction twice as fast. It's a difference between two people riding two different bicycles in the same direction and both of those people getting on the same bicycle and heading in the same direction. You would be pedaling twice as fast, and you would be getting to your destination twice as fast. So, with that being said, remember tomorrow, we're going to be giving you guys some financial information on how to make and budget money and potentially invest that money in other ways. Tonight and tomorrow, we're going to be putting up Wednesday's new country that we're going to be talking about, and potentially turning over profits overseas. And then the rest of the week you see is up there Thursday, Friday, and it should be Saturday for the rest of the week that you're going to see up there. And then Sundays are questions and comments from the fans. So I want to make sure that you guys hit the notification buttons throughout the week and remind yourselves when we get started, because we typically start at the top of the hour at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, which is like 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. But sometimes we're a little bit like 10 or 15 minutes late. But we usually are there right around. But you see the show is scheduled for 11:05 Eastern Standard Time, and we typically tee it off at around 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So make sure that you swing around between 11 and 11:15 Eastern Standard Time and see what we got going on for the day, and make sure that you hit those notifications so that you can be here, especially for the shows that you would like to get more information on. Now, one of the other things I want to tell you before we go is that since we archive everything, you can go to the YouTube platform and you can gain access to all of the information that we have ever covered over the last 2 or 3 years. I want to say we have it going back as far as the last 2 or 3 years. I know that it should be going as far back as August of 2024 for the most part, because we used to have a co-host show, and then we started improvements, and it ended up being a mono show, and the co-host videos have been overwritten with newer videos because we've done a lot more improvements. So at least going as far back as August of 2024, we have all of the information that we have covered, which would aid you in your ability to make better decisions in your personal life, so that you can put less pressure on your professional life. Because when you don't have enough money to sustain your personal life, you start begging for raises, begging for hours, promotions, and all this other stuff with your employer. And when you don't get that, when you don't get the income that you're looking for from your employer, that frustrates you and causes you to change jobs. Even with these shutdowns, with the loss of pay, not getting paid for months at a time, that frustrates you and it causes you to change jobs. But if you had more money lying around the house, you wouldn't be frustrated at a shutdown because your money's going to come eventually. Likewise, if you work for yourself, you'll find yourself raising prices on your customers in order to offset the expenses of your household. If your expenses of your household are cheaper, then you don't have to raise the prices on your customers, which gives you a stable income where you're capable of making it through these financial challenges. So all of this stuff is important to you guys. And you're able to go back through the archive and find ways to improve your personal life as well as your professional life. So take the time to go back and look at that. And then tomorrow, we'll be covering you guys with a new topic. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for coming to This and That. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And I will see you guys tomorrow night.
My network is my net worth. Choose your company wise. Surround yourself with eagles, not with sheep in disguise. Every interaction is a reflection of my brand. Quality over quantity, that's my personal command. I'm not landing on higher ground where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds, raising the bar, breaking ground. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never yield.